Hello everyone, and welcome back to Mr. A Finance today. We are going to discuss a new artificial intelligence model that is attracting global attention and creating fresh anxiety across the US technology sector. That model is Kimi K3, developed by Moonshot AI. What makes Wall Street nervous is not simply that China has released another large language model. The real concern is that Kimi K3 raises a much more important question. What happens if future AI models can achieve capabilities close to the leading American closed-source models while using significantly less active computing power? If artificial intelligence becomes dramatically more efficient, will U.S. technology companies still need to spend trillions of dollars on AI infrastructure at the pace Wall Street currently expects? And if each AI task requires fewer GPUs, what does that mean for NVIDIA, AMD, Broadcom, TSMC, data center operators, networking companies, and electricity suppliers? More importantly, Kimi K3 reportedly uses an architecture called stable LatentMoE. It contains 896 experts, but only 16 experts are activated for each token. How does this architecture actually work? Why can it reduce computing, memory, and communication costs? And in the long run, will open-source AI eventually defeat closed-source AI? Today, we will break down the technology, the market impact, and the investment implications. Part 1. What exactly is Kimi K3? Kimi K3 is the latest flagship artificial intelligence model developed by Moonshot AI. According to information released by the company, Kimi K3 has approximately 2.8 trillion total parameters. It supports native image understanding, offers a context window of up to 1 million tokens, and is designed for long-duration coding, knowledge work, agent-based tasks, and complex reasoning. The model reportedly introduces three important architectural upgrades. The first is Kimi Delta Attention, also known as KDA, which is a hybrid linear attention architecture. The second is Attention Residuals, a redesigned attention residual structure. The third is Stable LatentMoE, the sparse mixture of experts architecture that has attracted the most attention from investors. Kimi K3 reportedly contains 896 experts. For every token processed by the model, only 16 experts are selected and activated. Moonshot AI says that these architectural improvements, combined with better training methods and data recipes, have increased overall scaling efficiency by approximately 2.5 times compared with Kimi K2. However, there is an important point that must be clearly explained. As of July 18, 2026, Moonshot AI had not yet released the full Kimi K3 model weights or the complete technical report. The company said that the weights and technical documentation would be released by around July 27th. Therefore, when some media reports describe Kimi K3 as a fully open-source model, that description may be slightly premature. The model is already available through a website and an API, and Moonshot AI has revealed some of its architectural details. But the complete weights, training methodology, and licensing terms still need to be officially published. Moonshot AI has also acknowledged that Kimi K3 does not yet outperform the strongest closed-source models in every category. The company admits that there are still gaps in overall capability and final user experience. So Kimi K3 does not prove that American closed-source models have already lost their leadership. What it does prove is something more important. The gap between Chinese open models and the leading American closed models is narrowing very quickly, and improvements in model efficiency may be happening faster than Wall Street previously expected. Part 2. Why did Kimi K3 affect the U.S. stock market? On Friday, July 17, 2026, the S&P 500 fell by approximately 1.01%. The Nasdaq Composite declined by around 1.40%. The losses were even more severe in the semiconductor sector. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index had already fallen more than 20% from its June high, placing it in technical bear market territory. NVIDIA fell approximately 2.3%. Microsoft declined around 1.8%. Meta dropped about 2.8%. However, it would be inaccurate to claim that the entire market decline was caused by Kimi K3. Semiconductor stocks were already under pressure before the Kimi announcement gained widespread attention. Investors were concerned about excessive AI capital spending, expensive semiconductor valuations, disappointing corporate earnings, rising oil prices, and increasing geopolitical risk in the Middle East. Kimi K3 was more like a trigger. It reminded investors of what happened when DeepSeek shocked the market in 2025. If a Chinese AI company can use a more efficient architecture to achieve performance close to the most advanced American models, does the global AI industry really need an unlimited number of additional GPUs? That is the real question Wall Street is asking. The core AI investment thesis of the past several years has been very simple. Larger models require more chips. More chips require larger data centers. Larger data centers mean more revenue for NVIDIA, Broadcom, TSMC, networking companies, and electricity infrastructure providers. But Kimi K3 introduces another possibility. Artificial intelligence capabilities may continue to improve, while the amount of computing power required to produce each unit of intelligence continues to decline. Therefore, the market is not questioning whether AI demand will continue to grow. The market is questioning something more specific: how many GPUs, how much electricity, and how much capital expenditure will be required to generate each additional dollar of AI revenue. Part 3. How does a traditional mixture of experts model work? To understand stable LatentMoE, we first need to understand the basic concept of a mixture of experts, commonly called an MOE model. A traditional dense model can be compared to a company with one enormous general-purpose department. Whether the user asks a question about mathematics, programming, law, writing, or finance, a very large portion of the model's parameters must participate in the calculation. This structure is relatively simple, but it can be extremely expensive. An MOE model works differently. It is more like a large corporation with many specialized departments. One group of experts may specialize in programming, another may specialize in mathematics, another may focus on natural language. Other experts may specialize in images, tool use, reasoning, or different types of knowledge. When a token enters the model, a component called the router evaluates the token and decides which experts are most suitable for processing it. The router assigns scores to the experts and selects the top-performing experts for that specific token. The final output is then created by combining the outputs of the selected experts according to their routing weights. For example, Kimi K3 reportedly contained 384 experts. For each token, it selected 8 routed experts, together with one shared expert. The model had approximately 1 trillion total parameters, but only around 32 billion parameters were activated for each token. That is the fundamental advantage of an MOE model. The model can possess a very large total knowledge capacity without using every parameter for every token. Part 4. How does Kimi K3 select 16 experts from 896? Kimi K3 expands the total number of experts to 896. For each token, it selects 16 experts. 16 divided by 896 is only about 1.8%. But this does not mean that Kimi K3 uses only 1.8% of the entire model during inference. The attention layers, embedding layers, router, shared components, and other common parts of the model still need to operate. The 16 out of 896 figure applies specifically to the LatentMoE expert section. For each token, the router sends the token to 16 selected experts instead of processing it through all 896 experts. This raises an obvious question. If the number of experts has increased and the number of activated experts has also increased from 8 to 16, how can computing costs still decline? The key is the word latent. LatentMoE performs expert computation inside a compressed latent representation. Based on the publicly available LatentMoE research, the process can be simplified into 4 steps. Step 1. The token enters the model. The original token representation enters the MOE layer. Suppose the original hidden dimension of the model is represented by the letter D. Step 2. The representation is compressed. A trainable down projection matrix compresses the original D-dimensional representation into a smaller R-dimensional latent representation. In simple terms, the model converts a large high-dimensional token representation into a smaller and denser internal representation. Step 3. The router selects 16 experts. The router evaluates the compressed representation and selects 16 experts from the total pool of 896. These experts no longer need to process the full D-dimensional representation. Instead, they perform their calculations in the smaller R-dimensional latent space. Step 4. The output is expanded again. The outputs from the 16 selected experts are combined according to their routing weights. An up-projection matrix then expands the result back into the original hidden dimension required by the main network. In other words, Kimi K3 does not ask hundreds of experts to process full-size token representations. It first compresses the information. A small group of selected experts processes that compressed representation. The result is then restored to the standard model dimension.
You can think of it as a multinational company sending documents to its specialists.
In a traditional MoE system, the company may send a large collection of full-length documents to every selected expert. LatentMoE first compresses those documents into a high-density executive summary. The specialists work on the condensed version. After they finish, the results are converted back into the standard format required by headquarters. This can significantly reduce the size of the expert matrices and the volume of data moving across the hardware system. Part 5. Why can LatentMoE reduce computing costs? LatentMoE can reduce costs in 5 major ways. First, only a small number of experts are activated. Each token activates only 16 experts instead of all 896 experts. This allows Kimi K3 to contain approximately 2.8 trillion total parameters while using only a fraction of those expert parameters for each token. However, Moonshot AI has not yet publicly disclosed the exact number of activated parameters. Therefore, we should not simply multiply 2.8 trillion by 16 divided by 896. The model still contains shared layers, attention layers, and experts of potentially different sizes. Second, experts operate in a lower dimensional space. Traditional MoE experts process the full hidden dimension of the model. LatentMoE first reduces the dimensionality. Because the expert input and output dimensions are smaller, the expert matrices require fewer parameters and fewer matrix multiplication operations. The latent dimension effectively becomes a control knob. Model designers can adjust it to balance computation, expert capacity, memory use, and communication cost. Third, it reduces memory bandwidth pressure. Large model inference is not limited only by raw computing power. In many low-latency applications, the real bottleneck is repeatedly loading expert weights from high-bandwidth memory. This is especially important for conversational AI, coding assistants, and real-time agents. If expert matrices become smaller, the GPU needs to read less data from HBM. That can reduce latency and lower the cost per generated token. Fourth, it reduces communication between GPUs. Large MoE models usually distribute different experts across many GPUs. When the router selects an expert located on another GPU, the token representation must travel through NVLink or another high-speed interconnect. The output must then be transferred back. This is often called all-to-all communication. As the number of experts, activated experts, and token dimensions increase, communication can become a major bottleneck. LatentMoE compresses the token representation before sending it to the selected experts. Because the transmitted representation is smaller, less data must move between GPUs. This can reduce networking pressure and improve hardware utilization. Fifth, the saved resources can be reinvested. LatentMoE is not simply designed to make the model smaller. The resources saved through compression can be reinvested into a larger number of experts and a more diverse routing system. Kimi K3 selects 16 experts from a pool of 896. The theoretical number of possible 16 expert combinations is approximately 7.2 times 10 to the power of 33. Of course, the model will not use all of those combinations equally, but the enormous combination space allows the model to create highly specialized patterns of expert collaboration. A single sentence may contain programming logic, mathematical reasoning, language interpretation, and visual information. Different parts of that sentence can be routed through different combinations of experts. Therefore, the goal of LatentMoE is not merely to minimize computation. The goal is to produce greater model capacity and specialization at roughly the same practical inference cost. Part 6. What does the word stable mean? Having 896 experts may sound extremely powerful, but it creates a serious engineering problem. Some experts may become extremely popular and receive a huge number of tokens. Other experts may receive almost no traffic. This is called expert load imbalance. If a large number of tokens are sent to only a few experts, the GPUs hosting those experts become overloaded. Other GPUs may finish their work early, but they still have to wait for the busiest GPU. As a result, the speed of the entire system is determined by the most congested expert. To address this problem, Kimi K3 reportedly uses a method called quantile balancing. According to Moonshot AI, this method uses the distribution of router scores to balance expert assignments more directly. It reduces dependence on traditional heuristic adjustments and avoids relying on a highly sensitive load balancing hyperparameter. Kimi K3 also reportedly uses fully balanced expert parallel training, static computation shapes, and a design that avoids CPU synchronization along critical execution paths. In addition, the model uses a per-head muon optimizer, situ activation control, and quantization-aware training beginning at the supervised fine-tuning stage. The weights reportedly use MXFP4, while activations use MXFP8. These techniques can further reduce storage and inference costs. Therefore, the word stable in stable LatentMoE does not simply mean that the model does not crash. It means the system is designed to maintain balanced routing, stable training, predictable computation shapes, and efficient hardware utilization even with 896 experts. However, Moonshot AI also says that Kimi K3 is best deployed on a supernode containing 64 or more accelerators. That is a very important detail. Kimi K3 is not a low-cost model that can easily run on an ordinary personal computer. It remains an enormous 2.8 trillion parameter system. What it reduces is the marginal amount of computing required to achieve a given level of model capability. It does not make large-scale AI infrastructure unnecessary. Part 7. Does Kimi K3 mean GPU demand will decline? My conclusion is this. The number of GPUs required for each unit of intelligence may decline, but total global GPU demand may not decline. These are two very different ideas. Suppose an advanced AI task previously required 100 units of computing power. A new architecture reduces that requirement to only 40 units. For one individual task, hardware demand has clearly fallen. But lower costs can make AI accessible to millions of smaller companies and billions of users. The number of tasks performed every day could increase from 1 million to 100 million. This is similar to the economic concept known as the Jevons paradox. When the efficiency of using a resource improves, total consumption of that resource can actually increase. Kimi K3 itself is still designed for clusters with at least 64 accelerators. It also supports a 1 million token context window, multimodal input, and long-duration agent tasks. These tasks may run for hours and may coordinate multiple sub-agents at the same time. Therefore, a more efficient model does not mean that NVIDIA GPUs are no longer needed. Instead, it may change the structure of GPU demand. The industry may gradually shift from primarily training ever larger foundation models toward large-scale inference, long-running AI agents, 1 million token context processing, enterprise private deployment, high-speed networking, memory systems, and inference optimization. For NVIDIA, this creates short-term valuation pressure, but it does not necessarily mean the end of long-term demand. Part 8. Which companies face the greatest pressure? The first category is model companies that depend on high-priced APIs and high gross margins. As open models improve, enterprise customers gain more alternatives. They can deploy models internally. They can use lower-cost cloud providers. They can negotiate better pricing with closed-source model companies. This could reduce the pricing power and profit margins of closed-source AI providers. The second category is AI application companies without a strong competitive moat. If a company simply calls a closed-source API and places a basic user interface on top of it, the product can easily be copied when open models become more capable. The third category is companies whose valuations assume that AI capital expenditure will continue increasing forever at the same rate. If model efficiency improves faster than total AI usage grows, some infrastructure investment could be delayed. However, NVIDIA, AMD, and Broadcom should not automatically be classified as long-term losers. Kimi K3 still requires advanced GPUs, high bandwidth memory, high-speed interconnects, and large supernodes. In fact, having more experts can increase the importance of routing, networking, system software, and cluster-level optimization. Therefore, the real threat is not to advanced computing itself. The real threat is to the assumption that chip demand can only move in a straight line upward, regardless of improvements in model efficiency. Part 9. Will open source or closed source AI ultimately win? Many people are asking whether open source models will eventually destroy OpenAI, Anthropic, and other closed-source AI companies. My answer is no, but the pricing power previously enjoyed by closed-source model providers will probably continue to weaken. The most likely outcome is not complete domination by either open-source or closed-source AI. The market will probably develop into several layers. Layer 1. Frontier capabilities will remain largely closed. Developing the most advanced models requires leading-edge chips, massive datasets, highly specialized researchers, and enormous financial resources. Closed-source companies can also deploy safety systems, enterprise support, agent platforms, and complete product experiences more quickly. Moonshot AI itself acknowledges that Kimi K3 still trails the strongest closed models in overall capability and user experience. Therefore, customers may continue paying for premium closed models in high-value areas such as advanced coding, scientific research, finance, legal analysis, and mission-critical enterprise applications. Layer 2, mature capabilities will become commoditized. Once a capability has been demonstrated by a frontier closed model, the open-source community often catches up relatively quickly. A capability that is expensive and exclusive today may become a standard, self-hosted feature 6 months or 1 year later. Open models may play a role similar to Linux. They can become the foundation for enterprise private AI, government AI, industry-specific models, and locally deployed artificial intelligence systems. Layer 3. Competitive advantage will move toward products and ecosystems. In the future, AI company valuations may depend less on benchmark scores alone. The more important questions will be: who controls the customer relationship? Who owns unique and proprietary data? Who can integrate AI into real enterprise workflows? Whose agents are the most reliable? Who can provide security, privacy, and service stability? Who can convert AI usage into sustainable revenue and free cash flow? The underlying model may increasingly behave like a commodity. More value may migrate toward data, distribution, cloud infrastructure, agent systems, developer tools, and industry-specific solutions. Layer 4. Most companies will use both open and closed models. Businesses will probably not depend on only one model. Routine tasks can be assigned to inexpensive open-source models. Critical decisions and highly complex reasoning can be sent to premium closed models. Sensitive information can remain inside the company's own infrastructure. Public web searches and general information tasks can be handled through cloud-based services. In the future, companies may use a model router that automatically selects the best model based on task difficulty, privacy requirements, speed, and cost. Therefore, the final outcome will not be open source completely defeating closed source. It will also not be closed source successfully preventing open source models from catching up. Instead, open source models will reduce industry costs, expand adoption, and prevent excessive concentration of power. Closed source models will continue pushing the frontier of capability, product quality, and enterprise services. Both systems will coexist. But open source competition will continue limiting the price and profit margins that closed source providers can charge. Part 10. What does this mean for investors? The first lesson from Kimi K3 is that investors should not automatically assume that AI demand growth will translate into GPU demand growing at exactly the same rate every year. Architecture improvements, quantization, distillation, caching, sparsity, and inference optimization can all reduce the hardware required for each task. The second lesson is that investors should not conclude that NVIDIA's era is over because of one technical breakthrough. Kimi K3 still depends on large accelerator clusters, high-bandwidth networking, and advanced inference infrastructure. Lower AI costs may also create more applications and significantly increase inference demand. The third lesson is that investors need to pay more attention to whether companies can convert AI capital expenditure into real revenue. The safest companies will not simply be those purchasing the largest number of GPUs. They will be the companies that possess customers, proprietary data, distribution, strong cash flow, and a clear business model. The fourth lesson is that highly valued AI stocks still require disciplined position sizing. When the market has already priced in several years of extraordinary growth, any evidence that models can become more efficient may trigger valuation compression. For ordinary investors, the best response is not to sell every AI stock in panic. It is also not wise to blindly buy every decline. Instead, investors should ask 3 questions. Has the company's long-term competitive position actually changed? Have its future revenue and profit expectations materially declined? And does the current stock price provide an adequate margin of safety? Final conclusion. Let us bring everything together. Why did Kimi K3 create such a strong reaction in the US stock market? Because it challenges one of Wall Street's most important assumptions. Does continuous improvement in artificial intelligence require nearly unlimited growth in computing investment? How does stable LatentMoE work? it first compresses token representations into a lower dimensional latent space. A router then selects 16 experts from a pool of 896. Those experts process the compressed representation. The result is then projected back into the main model dimension. Why can this reduce costs? Because it can reduce the number of active expert parameters, the amount of expert weight data loaded from memory, pressure on GPU memory bandwidth, and the volume of communication between GPUs. However, Kimi K3 does not mean that global GPU demand is about to collapse. The computing power required for each individual task may decline, but lower costs may also create far more AI applications and much greater total demand. The real change is that the center of competition in artificial intelligence may gradually shift. The most important question will no longer be simply, who has the largest model? Instead, the industry will ask, who has the most efficient model? Whose agents are the most reliable? Who controls the customer relationship? Who owns the data? Who has the strongest ecosystem? And who can turn artificial intelligence into sustainable revenue and cash flow? As for the final outcome of the battle between open source and closed source AI, my conclusion is this: open source models will not completely eliminate closed source models. Closed source companies will also be unable to prevent open models from catching up. The strongest frontier capabilities may continue to be led by closed source companies, but mature AI capabilities will be rapidly commoditized by open source systems. The ultimate winners may not be the companies with the largest models. They will be the companies that continue controlling customers, products, data, semiconductors, infrastructure, and commercial distribution, even as the value of individual models declines. Thank you for watching Mr. A Finance. If you found this video helpful, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. In our next episode, we will examine what Kimi K3 means individually for NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Meta, Broadcom, and TSMC.